You always want to make sure you get as close as possible in camera. You don't want to do big changes in the post-production, but to get that polished, commercial looking image, you of course need to do some retouching. I would smoothen out any kind of imperfections on the skin, but making sure you don't over polish it, take out all the texture. We actually got pretty close to the final look of the images in camera, which is always great. The most work in retouching was cleaning up the imperfections from the curtain in the background. When it comes to post-processing, I always start with the bigger things in the image, meaning the set. Is there any imperfections in the set that are distracting? I go into the curtain in the background, I make sure there's no weird kind of things happening there, and I fix that first. Once I'm happy with how the background looks, I move on to the actual subject. I start with their clothes, make sure there's no distracting wrinkles, weird things happening, stains, all that, taking it out. Last thing I do is the beauty retouching on the face, which to get that polished commercial look, I think is crucial. You have to do it, but you cannot overdo it. That's the difficult balance you have to find. I usually always go a bit over at first and then just bring down the opacity, sometimes a lot, to bring it to feel natural. Usually it's good to discuss pretty thoroughly with your client what is the level of retouching they wish to have in the images, because this will save a lot of time and going back and forth in the post-process. Specifically in the shoot, the request from AFGAN's team was to keep the skin looking natural. So mainly just do like under eyes, make sure the hair is nice and smooth, and just overall looking as a polished final product, but not too like 3D modeling fake type of thing, rendered image. So yeah, it was a bit of a balance between enough retouching or not enough retouching. I also tweaked the colors a bit to feel more uniform and aligned with the color of the product. For the product shots, the product name, which is written in holographic letters, posed the biggest challenge. With the amount of lights we were using, it seemed like an impossible task to eliminate all the reflections and also keep the text legible. We tried angling the lights differently and blocking off certain areas, but nothing seemed to get rid of all the reflections. And also, we still wanted to highlight the hologram aspect of the design, since it's a distinct feature of the product. My initial idea was to fix this in Photoshop by using plate images, which means I would combine the text from multiple images with slightly differing lighting angles, and in that way eliminate reflections. The problem with this was that once there were no highlights or reflections from the light, the text just looked dark and dull, which doesn't really represent how the text looks like in real life. And of course we want the product to be looking its best and recognizable in these images. So instead, I ended up creating the text as a graphic from two different layers, one being solid white and the other simulating holographic qualities. I merged the two layers together and played around with different blending modes in Photoshop until I ended up with this final result. I wasn't sure how well it would work when I started trying this, but I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I feel like it's a pretty good representation of how you'd perceive the packaging when you see it with your own eyes.